kind of unusual for a lot of folks right now, but me and my brother absolutely wanted to get in and talk about some issues that are floating around on the internet and certainly some of the causes of our discussions that we'll be having today. So, no need for more of an introduction. That's retired Sheriff Victor Hill, Jerome Hill, and obviously this is the live portion, special live portion of the Hill of Justice. So we're going to be shooting the breeze today. We're really not concerned with a lot of this stuff that is going around in terms of a production. So, brother, yes, we have this guy who comes in, and some of the still images that you see is of a long rifle coming into the building and taking folks out. Uh, it's just wild, and um, what's your thoughts of it? I mean, I could go a little bit into what the heck he was thinking. I mean, the gunman goes about, you know, onto this ridiculous rampage, blaming the NFL for his CTE. Never played in the NFL. I think he played high school. Um, and then, four people are dead, and he people are just stunned how he's making these wild claims, and naturally he goes into 345 Park Avenue and does all this nonsense. Unfortunately, he kills a police officer. Um, so I believe his last officer, Islam. He was 36 years old. Um, but that officer had no chance with the power of weapon that he had. Um, Throw it at me, man.
All right, Jerome, we got a serious mental health issue in this country. And everybody's, no, I'm not going to say everybody, but the majority of the leadership act like they don't know what to do. And I'm not going to, and to their credit, nobody's giving them the resources or the tools to do something about it. We hear a lot about how there were these state hospitals, mental asylums that were open and that they all closed. And you hear a lot from sheriffs, and they're telling the truth because when I was a sheriff, that was a case that we've turned the jails into mental health facilities. And that's true. And we haven't just turned it into mental health facilities, we also turn them into homeless shelters. Let me give you two examples. I had a woman that kept running in traffic trying to get herself killed. She was having a mental health crisis. My deputies get her, they detain her. Of course, they don't want to take her to jail. So they try to get her committed. 3 hours, nobody would take her. There's no place for her to go. So I had to make a decision. Okay, do we just release her back out to the public so that she can either use somebody's vehicle to kill herself or possibly get them killed if they veer off the road to avoid her? So I told her, I told them, I said, hey, go ahead and charge her with impeding traffic,
Mhm.
and we'll put her in a infirmary and get her mental health there because we have mental health treatment there, of course, because it's a jail. So we had to charge somebody criminally with something that we really shouldn't have to. When you can get these folks committed, they keep them 72 hours if you're lucky. I've seen them release people after 48 hours. Even if this guy got committed, if they kept him for a day, 2 or 3 days, would that have stopped this from happening? Of course not. So, what's going to happen to solve this problem? Because this is a safety issue. It's not just a it's a safety issue, not just for the mental health people, but it's a safety issue for just anybody there. My understanding is this guy didn't even get off on the right floor. So he gets off on the wrong floor and doesn't kill people who work for the NFL. Not saying that we wanted them to
Right.
suffer that,
Sure.
but just innocent people because we don't have mechanisms in place for the mentally ill. The only thing that's gonna work, and I've talked to mental health professionals and I've told them this, And then I asked him, "Can you think of a better idea?" And even people who've been in mental health profession for years, like I know we're going to have one on our show at some time, who's actually our uncle, who's been in the mental health profession for 30 years, and he said he can't really think of anything else either after doing this for 30 years. But we're going to have mental health centers. They're going to have to be detention type facilities, even though I know nobody wants to hear that. And when people have these type of breakdowns, they're going to have to be there for longer than 72 hours for their safety and the safety of everybody else. Then there are some people, they're never going to be mentally healthy enough to live in society. They can't live with their family because they're too violent. They're going to do things, and the family may not be able to physically control them. And even if they could, they can end up getting locked up because the wrong cop comes and now you're charged with domestic violence. And we just did a podcast on a woman who's mentally ill and killed her son. And the son was in there. How long was he in there? How many weeks he was in there dead?
Oh yeah, for a while.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. If there was something done, there was all the signs there, the way the house was kept and everything, that she's not even mentally capable of taking care of herself. How can she take care of a child?
Right.
So the state, the government has to have the authority to intervene and stuff like that. The problem is going to come is you're going to have so many people out there like, well, the constitutional rights. Well, we just can't detain people. But if we don't strengthen legislation around it, which needs to be civil, not criminal, that gives the authorities the ability to detain these people for their safety and the safety of the public, this is going to continue. And that means anybody at any moment is acceptable to be shot, stabbed, ran over by a car. Because I can guarantee you one thing about this guy. We don't know the whole story yet, but there were what we refer to as pre-attack indicators.
Yeah. Hmm.
And and then law enforcement no longer, well, not law enforcement, but you got a bunch of crazy prosecutors and stuff like that, that they act like that doesn't exist. I mean, we had a case where I had people with pre-arrest indicators, and I restrained them because I knew they were crazy. I knew they were violent. And we all know the story there. I get a 18-month prison system sentence because they said this was a violation of rights, which of course they were lying. We know there was something more behind that, and that's another story for another time. But if we don't start being preemptive, if we don't start taking these people off the street, and I'm not saying put them in a jail cell, but they have to be at a hospital, and the people there have to be trained. They got to be part counselor, part officers. That we can't put them in a center and allow them to be subjected to illegal drugs, be subjected to other stuff. There has to be order. Some of these people are violent, and they have to be there away from society. Let me add one more thing: homelessness. Now, how does that tie in? Everyone homeless is not mentally ill. People can end up homeless or something, but
Hmm.
there is a alarming percentage of people who are homeless and mental illness. And sometimes they're homeless because they're mentally ill, because they can't function, they can't get a job, they can't even live with their family because of certain things are with her. So now they end up homeless. And so the jail has not only become a place, the county jail has not only become a place for the mentally ill, which you have to criminally charge them to be there, but sometimes they're there because they're homeless. I'll tell you this, and I'm gonna turn it back over to you. Funny story. I'm a 21-year-old patrolman, and there's a guy. His name is Macmillan, and and he basically was like the town drunk. And this is not in Atlanta. This is my hometown before I moved to Atlanta. And usually Macmillan, once a week, he gets drunk, and we have to lock him up for public drunk, and he's fine. I'm at a stoplight. He walks over to my car. I say, "Hey, Macmillan, how you doing? What's going on?" And he says, "Hey, excuse my language, lock my ass up and take me to jail." So I started laughing. For what? You're not drunk. He said, "Lock me up, lock my ass up to be in jail." I said, "McMillan, you haven't done anything wrong. You look fine." He's like, "No, I need to get off the street. I'm hungry, it's cold, whatever." I said, "I just can't lock you up because you're going to be locked up." So he goes and stands in front of my car. He said, "I'm not moving until you lock me up." And I was like, "Come on now, I can't, whatever." And that, let me tell you how serious he was. Until I said, "I can't do that." I back up, I drive around him. 5 minutes later, he walks in the store, steals something, and walks outside and sits and wait on me. So now he gives me a crime to put him in for shoplifting. He really did
Mm.
it because he was homeless, no food, the weather wasn't good, And I didn't have a charge to take him on. So now for years, the jail has become a place for homelessness. The jails have become a place for mental health, and those are two different issues. They're not criminal issues, but they're tied to crime. So we got to solve it. I was in a third world country, and I never forget the guy that was with me, and I was there as an advisor. And he said, we don't have any homelessness here. And I said, what do you mean we don't have any homelessness? He said, those two buildings that we just drove by. I said, yeah, what about it? Looks like an apartment building. He said, no, that's government. No one here is homeless. Everybody has a place to stay. It's not a mansion. I mean, it was probably the equivalent to Motel 6 or something like that.
Mhm, mhm.
But it's better than being outside in the cold or in the heat and no restroom or whatever like that. But they just eliminated the homeless problem just like that. Okay, you're
Right,
gonna have a place to stay.
right,
So do we leave these people out in the tents? Do we just let people walk around that have lost touch with reality and wait for them to hurt somebody and say, hey, we need to do something? If there's a better answer,
right,
I know you got it.
right. I will. Let me go ahead and take a stab at this. What is being done to train Ellie to recognize mental health crisis? Well, there's a couple models that's going on right now. One of the models happens to be, which I'm not and jumping in on this at any time you want to, Keith. The co-responder models, okay, where you have a mental health professional with you while you're going ahead and dealing with this. Um, but so many things can happen to the mental health professional that it's not really one of those widely adopted models. We have more so the CITs out there, the crisis intervention teams. And these are aimed at basically trying to go ahead and teach officers, whether it's in service training or something else, to identify signs of mental illness. These are all good. And of course, you have, others, of course, in some of these trainings, they try to simulate individual trainings. And scenarios are great when they're done in the academy, but that's a static environment. You're not your best teacher is always going to be, in a very dynamic, very flowing situation. That's when you're going to get all that stimuli. This is where you're going to go ahead and get and really put with your life skills on top of the skills that you learned at the police academy and even through an in-service training, how to deal with individuals who are ill, whether it's temporary or for a long time. And a lot of those are some of the models that are going on in and out of there. But brother, guess what?
Lead on me.
In the 1800s, all the way until about 1950s, you had about 500 beds for in these asylums and institutions. And the reason why I'm bringing this up because let's talk about the Batman and son, of course his
Arkham
arch
Asylum.
enemy,
Yeah.
right, right,
Yeah.
and it's born out of what um, America knew once in their past of how many beds were available for mental illness. And just to give everybody a bit of context, we didn't have the population that we do now. And we're talking about 500 beds. That's incredible. Today, 40,000.
Mm.
That's a complete delivery of all the way it being all the way down. Um, that paradigm shift is extreme, and we got more people walking on this earth, and particularly in the United States. It's definitely not enough to service these individuals.
You're right, but we're going to have to find the funding. The money is there. When you hear about all this government waste, if any of this stuff, and I believe it. I mean, if we were really $1 million worth of content to a country, then the money is there where we could use it for stuff like mental health. And the only logical way to deal with it is they have to be placed in some type of mental health asylum where they can get treatment, where they can get medication. It's the only way to handle it.
Right.
Again, these things can happen.
Right.
We've seen countries where everybody gets free health care. We've seen countries where everyone gets a free education. We've seen that. And so we're going to have to be a country where mental health, we provide something not just for their protection, but for the
Mhm.
protection of the world. And see, one thing we got to do too is we got to be realistic about it. The place can't just be doctors and nurses. There's going to have to be guards there
Oh,
because
without a doubt.
a
Right.
lot of these people are
Yeah.
violent.
Right.
And a lot of people got to understand this.
Or can become. Yeah.
They can become violent.
Mhm.
And a lot of people got to understand is that a lot of people's lives are at risk. There's a woman I know for a long time, very nice lady. She was a waitress at a restaurant that all of our deputies used to eat at. And one day her son killed her. And
Mhm.
he'd been suffering from mental illness for a while.
Mhm.
So, you know, and all the indications were there, no doubt, but there was
Mhm.
no place to place him or whatever. If he was in a place like this, then she wouldn't be in that type of danger. And it's a place that he can visit. Is it going to be a place like a jail? No, not exactly like that. But they
Right.
can't just walk off anytime that they want. But I say that to say is this: there are a lot of people that when sometimes these people have to be dealt with physically. Sometimes they have to be shot. Sometimes they have to be tased, whatever like that. And they're like, well, they're mental health people. But you're asking people to risk their lives or be seriously injured. Just
Mhm.
because they're mentally ill doesn't give them the right to hurt and kill people. Just like this guy here, we everybody probably hopes that the police would have neutralized him before he got to kill four people.
Right.
So we've also got to come off of this notion that the cops, okay, well, why didn't they escalate? If they had more training, they could talk to him. Listen, I was a hostage negotiator for a decade, and I wish I could tell you everyone I spoke to came out peacefully. More than 50% did, but there was a percentage that didn't. And
Mhm.
that's why you see a lot of family members sometimes take risks. I was on my way back from Kansas today. I was taking an Uber to the airport, and we were talking about mental health. We were talking about actually the situation with the guy thinking that the NFL is responsible for him. And he was telling me how his daughter suffered with mental health,
Mhm.
and he was called over to go there, and she held a knife, and he said, listen, I couldn't even talk her out of putting the knife down after an hour. So he
Mhm.
said finally I had to catch her and tackle her and take the risk of getting stabbed because he didn't want to call. He was afraid to call the police because he know, well, hell, they might shoot her. So
Right.
he wanted to take that risk because that's his daughter and he loves her. But to expect a total stranger to say, well, no matter what,
We're
if
not
they
taking that
stab
risk.
me or whatever, I'm not going to do anything because
Right.
their mental health. They have a right to go home and not be injured. Mental
Right.
health doesn't give you the ability to just uh do whatever you want to anybody because of mental health, and that they shouldn't have the right to defend themselves.
I'm glad
So
you
we've
brought
got
that
to
point up.
understand that as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that point up because remember I was talking to you about the 1800s all the way into the 1950s that we had these asylums, we had all these mental health institutions. Well, it was because of those institutions that they had. If I can remember the context of what happened before, there was a lot of abuses going on in the system
Yes.
and experiments being done. It was just a bunch of nonsense that was going on because I guess they were ripe for abuse. So at this point in time, of course medicine got better later on in the decades, and you started seeing up until the 70s, 80s, and particularly in the 90s where people were saying, where's the mental health hospitals at, where's the institutions at? Well, guess what, they
Mm-hmm.
shuttered them. And yeah, it's a byproduct because um, I believe the medication is called Thorazine. It is one of the medications that they give frequently to patients who are mentally ill, and that has brought that down. And we could definitely ask our uncle how that played, so we could table a little bit of that, or just explain a little bit what we just gathered on that end of it. But that's brought that down. But as you know, right now, more than ever, on top of all the ills of society, on top of the pandemic that has taken a lot of people to a different level, in lack of education, lack of resources, needing more resources more than ever before. People are more desperate. They're cracking more than ever before, and it's become the scourge.
I agree. I
So
agree.
yeah.
And
It-
again, there's no way for the average family to be able to contain that.
Mhm.
There's no
Right.
way to, okay, you don't know when this person's going to have an episode or something. They have killed and injured family members. They have to be somewhere where professionals can deal with it.
Mhm.
And
I just want to
it's
let you know about a news event that just popped up, Keith. An
okay.
8.8 magnitude earthquake just hit outside a remote part of Russia. So there is tsunami alerts all over, I would imagine, Hawaii, so on and so forth. So just wanted to
Wow.
let
Because,
you know.
yeah, earthquake there can actually have an effect on the ocean and cause a tsunami, correct?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It can cause that big time. So an
Interesting.
8.8
Okay.
is pretty significant. So depending on what type of earthquake it is, and when I say is it tectonic in nature, is it what could have been called by a ripple of volcanic in nature? We just don't know at this point in time. So I just wanted to
Right.
give you a heads up that that is a breaking news item. I'm seeing it on my phone and everything like that.
Okay. Okay. So we'll definitely be discussing that. It's one other incident, and I could have sworn I sent you video on this maybe a few weeks ago. I'm gonna find it and I want us to play it because mental health is not nothing you can just discuss in one show.
Right.
I know we're gonna have Joseph Brown on, who's been in mental health for years, to discuss
Mhm.
it. But there's a situation in Atlanta I saw, and I just happened to come across it, and it was about a guy with mental health issues that would just stand out in this particular area, just scream and yell. Well, the businesses were very upset about it because it was scaring off customers and everything like that.
He had a
And the
sword.
right, yeah, and that's what I was about
Yeah,
to
he had
get
a
to.
sword. That's the
Right, but
guy.
no,
Yeah.
he started without the sword. Then he
Right,
has the
right.
sword.
But
So
he's
and what
divulged into the sword. Yeah.
right, involving to the sword. And
Mhm,
then,
mhm.
law enforcement seem to have this, well, he's just standing there. Well, he's not hurting anybody with a sword. He's just dancing or whatever. And see, it's that type of lackadaisical attitude. What's amazing, and a lot of it has happened because we got some real silly prosecutors, especially here in Georgia.
Mhm,
But what we're saying is this: it's okay for him to stand there and swing that sword.
mhm.
And they're losing business. I mean, would you want your family member to go to a business where there's a guy swinging a sword, and just the one day he snaps and he decides he wants to start stabbing or slicing people with the sword, and you're there? And what's
Right.
so interesting about that? And and I don't want to tie every case to my case, but it's a great example. It's kind of like when I used to use a restraint chair to jail, because there are people that I knew were violent, could be potential problems. And then, and even though we know this wasn't the real motive because it was political and with a campaign, when they
Right.
made up all of this craziness, well, they weren't violent at the time, they weren't this or whatever. So now they stop using it, and five people get murdered in the jail. Never, now the Clayton County Jail has the highest murder rate in Georgia now,
Mhm.
and that was after we stopped doing things. When we
Right.
saw problems of potential people,
Mhm.
five people get murdered, untold amounts of stabbings. Assaults on officers went up over 100%. Inmates on inmates assaults went up over 200%. So it's that same type of stupidity and the same type of making law enforcement hesitant because, well, we don't want to violate his rights. He's just screaming and yelling and holding a sword. And that sounds all good and well until this man starts stabbing people with a sword.
Yeah.
And then now they're
Because that's
looking
what.
like a bunch of dummies.
Yeah, yeah. And to add to that point, the thing that crystallizes it all is the news reporters. They didn't go up to his ass to ask him questions.
Yeah, they
What
should
were they
have.
doing?
Yeah,
Hey,
the
guess
dude
what?
is just
They're
he's just a
talking to him on the
sword.
phone. Can you just
Exactly.
right? If it's just a sword, then why are they so scared? They love being in people motherfuckers' faces left and right. Here you go. Especially when they're dead. They got dead family members. They're up in people's faces. Guess what? You and I've seen this before. People who just died and you gave them bad news, they want to take you out.
I totally agree. That's why in my book I write a chapter about the press and the prosecutors, because those two dummies together have pretty
Mhm.
much destroyed the world. They create riots, they create all type of situations. Because imagine if officers, let's imagine I would have told my deputies, get him off the street. And he's a
Mhm.
person that probably should be restrained for observation when he first gets to the jail. Well, they would have
Yeah.
covered that story. Oh my God, the dude is just swinging a sword, and oh my God, they restrained him for safety. And they would have came up close for something like that.
Yeah.
But in this situation, they just want to stay away and talk. So unfortunately, the press and the prosecutors have created an extremely
Mhm.
dangerous situation for this country.
Yeah. I do want to address this comment here. Community Mental Health Act of 1963, signed by JFK, closed a lot of hospitals. And let me go into a little bit about that. It's not like it directly closed those hospitals, but it did trigger the deinstitutionalization of those type
Wow.
of hospitals. And the reason was that local authorities and states saw an opportunity to close those hospitals because of that 1963 act. And that's how that whole thing, and they're trying to save money. Guess what? Close it this way that we can use the money for something else. um, but you know, the devastating part was that the federal money had tied up, had dried up because of this,
Hmm.
with that act. And guess what? With the monies that are matching in kind, the states were pulling back. Hey, if the feds are pulling back money, I'm gonna pull back money, and I'm not going to deal with that no more. So that was the devastating effect of the 1963 Act. But good question.
Wow.
That was an absolutely good question.
Yeah, that's one of those highly educated questions
Hmm.
there. Yeah, yeah, get that person's name.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I'm gonna look deep into that, because I can tell you this right now. It's no secret I'm running for the 5th congressional district for Congress. And already that's a major part of my platform. There
Mhm.
has to be major federal funding for institutions in every state,
Right.
because right now everyone's unsafe because of this. If a
Right.
guy can stand in front of a store and swing around a sword, and law enforcement's like, well, there's nothing we can do about it,
Mhm.
and even if they got the guy committed, under the current situation the way it is in Georgia, we'd be lucky if they held him 72 hours. I've seen them come out in 24 hours,
Mhm.
48 hours. But
Right.
the most you can hope for is 72 hours. So good, 72 hours of safety. And are you telling me he's cured now? He's now mentally healthy. Everything is fine. And we got to understand, there are some people who are just never going to be cured. It's uncurable.
Right. Right.
So they're going to have to live in a mental health facility for their safety,
Right.
and also for the public safety. And some of these people are not going to be able to function. I doubt seriously if a guy that stands in front of a store every day holding a sword can functionally hold a job. So
Yeah.
he can't support himself anyway.
Well, there's
So he's going to have to be a ward of the state
sure.
or a
Right.
ward of the federal government. You see what I'm
A-
saying?
and this story is even more wild work. Other than that, it's crazy, crazy. What else? The motherfucker don't even live there.
Exactly.
That's the other part of it. He doesn't even live there. He did. He's essentially a squatter.
So let me tell you another
That's
story.
crazy stuff. Is stuff right there.
Let me tell you another story. And this is going on in my beloved Clayton County right now. And we got to do this again, because we need to show videos and pictures. I actually saw some pictures today, because the problem is not solved. So I had a Clayton County citizen reach out to me and say, "Hey, listen, I know you're not the sheriff anymore, but I need some advice. I need some help. I
Mhm.
wish you were still here, because I know if you were here, we wouldn't be dealing with this." Okay, well, tell me about it. We got a guy in the neighborhood that he's completely lost it. He's He'll take a bow and arrow and he'll kill a deer, and then he'll do all types of things with the deer and hang it up. He'll start fires. I mean, just all kind of craziness,
Mhm.
and nobody would do anything. Well, I was able to get it to someone in Clayton, and they did go look into it, and they were
Mhm.
able to contact the police chief, and they were able to get him committed. But guess what? They let him back out. Now he's taking the house apart. I just got a picture today where he's literally taking his house apart, board by board. The
Mhm.
people are afraid. They're afraid to let their kids go out and play. The dude is running around with a bow, a real bow, not one, and not one of those bows. Don't get me wrong; those bows are dangerous too. But I'm talking
Mhm.
about the bows that come. There's a word I'm looking for. It has all the it's a more complicated. It's not like a crossbow, but it has even more power because it
Okay.
has all of the springs and stuff like that. I can't remember
Okay.
the name of one of them right now, but that has the ability to not just kill people, but make them suffer in the worst way. So even when they were finally able, after I made some calls, they were finally able, and they thanked me for that. It was like, wow, nobody wasn't even doing that. We called the police, we done whatever. They were finally able to get him committed, and they just let him right back out. Well, if
Yeah.
they had solved his problem, he wouldn't be taking his house apart right now.
Right. Right. So it's crazy
And
work.
so this whole everyone in the neighborhood, they don't know what to do. Imagine you live in a situation like that.
Mhm.
You live in the American dream. You finally purchase a house, but it's a nightmare because you got a man that you don't know what he's going to do next.
Right. Right.
Running around with Bowie knives and crossbows. Um, I believe he's a veteran,
Mhm.
and we got to think about this too. Our veterans and the mental health problems they may have if they've been to war or whatever like that. It's all coincide. They talk about veterans court, but again, we're still probably talking about mental health court. So now we're going to talk about veterans having mental health. Let's talk about cops. And this came up on one of our podcasts before.
Mhm.
Okay, so
Yeah.
cops have what? One of the highest suicide rates, one of the highest divorce
Sports
rates,
rates. Right.
highest alcohol rates.
Mhm.
So we all know everybody has to have mental screening when they first get hired.
Right.
But do they get mental health screening again? Maybe if they're in
Maybe
a
if there's a critical incident
if
that
there's a
happens.
right, if they're involving an officer involved shooting, maybe
Right.
then, and sometimes they don't always get it then.
Mhm.
But everyone has a different mental threshold. So, you know, I worked homicide for 10 years, but there were people that couldn't work homicide or came there and had to leave because they couldn't stand the sight of seeing a dead body.
Right.
Uh I've been on scenes that I've seen. I remember there was a car chase and the suspects hit a car
Mhm.
and killed two women. One woman was pregnant, and just as I was getting there, they were pulling a 4-year-old out the car, and he took his last breath. And when I saw how they reacted, I was concerned for their mental health. But
Right.
this was
And
back
we're
in
going
the
to talk
day.
about that too in a future
Exactly,
show.
exactly. Because when the kid died, one of them had a reaction right there on the scene.
Right.
Now I'm just a patrolman at that time and thinking to myself, maybe he might need to go, whatever. Don't get me wrong, no one's ever happy about seeing a child die, but the
Right.
way he reacted that day, that stayed in my mind.
Mhm.
So maybe our officers should be getting mental health screening or being checked on at least every 6 months.
Mhm.
Because think about what you see. Even as a sheriff, of course, I'm kind of unique because I used to respond to scenes. Most sheriffs don't; they stay home. But I saw at least 3 dead bodies a week, and it might not even have nothing to do with a murder, a fatality. A
Mhm.
guy walk in front of the MARTA bus and he gets caught up in the tires. I mean, those things happen, and I
Yeah,
respond to
they
it. You
do.
see it,
Mhm.
okay? Well, other people might not react to it the way I did.
Mhm.
Other people see it and may send them their mental threshold may not be a certain way. So how do we know
Mhm.
his mental health could be different from the day he got hired after seeing 2, 3 years of carnage?
Mhm.
So then if he just happens to overreact one day and punches somebody's lights out when they say something, maybe that's why. We're not
Mhm.
condoning it, but maybe if we stay on top of that, we won't see incidents where we wonder why officers overreact.
Mm. Yeah, well, you do have those things that are going all the time, and I would I would suspect that a lot of misconduct by police when it comes to use of force is a direct result because of some post stress that they're dealing with, and it doesn't necessarily have to be on the job either.
That's true.
It could be at home. When you're talking about rates, the divorce rate is about 90% and above. Suicide rates through the roof. Alcoholism. Um,
Yes.
I known an officer to sleep in the district house because he had several wives, several divorces, children, and basically he damn near lived, breathed, and worked at the department, and he couldn't afford to go elsewhere. He would just hang out and sleep right there. We had showers and, of course, a bunch of other stuff there, but he was always doing double shift.
He was homeless.
Yeah, as as a police officer, you know.
What ended up happening to him? Do you know?
I'm not quite sure because I went into plain clothes.
Right.
And I think, and he stayed in in that capacity of
But you
uniform.
had at least three guys you work with take their lives, correct?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And even uh I don't want to say her name, but yeah, even a woman. And all of them just tragic, especially her. Um, the respective family. I'm not going to say her name, but she was so sad that she made an attempt on her life at first, and the department did the right thing and um, you know took her gun and badge, and naturally her what she was dealing with something. Okay,
Right.
and of course we don't know about that. Um, about a year later, they gave her back her gun and badge, and it was shortly thereafter she put salt, pepper, and ketchup on it and ate it. Um, you know, um, Beautiful woman. You would think, oh man, she's got it all put together. Um, and she had her pick of suitors. You know, but something was amiss. I never saw it. I never saw the clues. At least when I was in uniform, I just never saw it. Once I got out of uniform, um, I wasn't with the patrol unit anymore, so I don't know what happened thereafter.
Right.
Um, but
Right.
I always wondered about that. I do know that one of the other guys, um, she wanted a divorce. He loved her desperately. He was a gentle giant, and you know, um, he had a son. And when you go to those type of funerals, you just all you could do is just suck your teeth
Yes.
on the pew because you're just like, well, how did it come down to this? You know what I mean? I
That's
mean, we
true.
went through wars together.
Yeah.
I mean, we were actually in the thick of people trying to destroy us. How do you get off destroying yourself? The world does a good enough job by itself trying to destroy you. It doesn't need help,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, that's what happened. And so, you know, uh, it's a couple of them use their own service weapons,
Yes.
to do that. And
Yeah, the majority
you know,
do.
and the sad part about it is that, of course, as officers, we speak to one another about the matter and stuff like that. But after a few days, it's just back to normal, because we got the next crisis we got to deal with. So I agree with you. Something that in the 6 month span of assessing officers, and it's a great point that you made about homicide. You saw about three bodies a week, but
Yeah,
what
that's that.
about
No, that is the
us?
sheriff. I'm just
Right,
an
right,
administrator that loves to go out on calls. When I was in
right,
homicide, I
right.
would see a whole lot more than that because we
Yeah,
responded to
but
everything: suicides,
right, sure,
natural
sure.
deaths, accidental
That's the
deaths, and of course homicides.
That's the point that I wanted to make. What about um larger areas like we worked in Pittsburgh or Baltimore, where
Hmm.
we had larger population centers. And so, of course, we got to call homicide to rule things out, one
Exactly.
way or another. And thus, what about those officers that were seeing all this stuff? Now, Baltimore, of course, it was just, the narcotics, at least the heroin capital of the United States. So you
Hmm.
saw a lot of individuals just going ahead and passing because of the drug trade and how voluminous it was in that city. Um, but that wasn't everybody, you know. So you had a lot of accidental deaths, falls, construction, so on, and everything that's involved in a big inner city like that. We had, of course, the ports that we deal with. That's another set of issues, safety hazards on that end of it. So you see a whole bunch of stuff, and of course, the water deaths all over the place because we have the big bays and rivers there. You know, officers in those areas see a lot.
Yeah.
And you just wondered how they're able. Um, if you could, it's almost like some of them just dehumanize people to say, "Hey, guess what?" and walking like zombies. Okay,
Yeah.
that person's gone. So there's many tricks on how people were trying to deal
To
with
cope
those
with
type of
it.
things that they were seeing. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So that's pretty much my take on that.
You're
Yeah,
absolutely right.
yeah.
Well, this is definitely something that we're gonna have to have many conversations on. But
Mhm,
one thing that I've always been a proponent of, what works, you know.
mhm,
There came a time, Jerome, where I quit going to symposiums because you hear the same thing at symposiums, but nobody
mhm.
has a resolution. You go to it and you hear, well, okay, well, this many people get pregnant, this many people are in jail, this many people, whatever, and they talk about the problem, but no one has any solutions. And I've always been about what I think the academics refer to as problem solving policing.
Mhm.
It's one thing to talk about, okay, well, we got a drug epidemic in the community. Okay, fine. Okay, well, how do we get the drugs out of here? So I had to come out with practical ways to stop the drugs, and it turned out not to be rocket science. It was as simple as putting a police car in front of a trap house and leaving it there 24/7 a day. Not an empty police car, but someone in it and changing
Sure,
shifts. Well, they
sure.
can't sell drugs anymore, but practical solutions so we can actually get something. And that's what I'm interested in. That's what I've always been interested in. I never really been interested in rhetoric.
I do
I
got a
want to see
question for you.
results. And say it again.
I do got a question for you.
Oh, let me hear the question.
Do you think that shit would have worked in Baltimore City?
Yeah, if you got enough officers, yes. I
Oh,
mean,
okay.
are
Well,
they
it
are they
wouldn't
gonna sell
since we didn't
drugs?
have enough.
Okay, so yeah, yeah. But let me ask you this. Well, that's a good time to use overtime instead of using it for all of the crazy
Well,
stuff we see it being
that's the
used for.
problem that we had in Baltimore all the time was the use of overtime.
Exactly. For hours people
It
aren't
was
working.
perverse.
Exactly. But if you actually paid overtime so that people could sit there in front of a trap house, because
Mhm.
unless the officer
But
is
see, you're used to trap houses. See,
right.
there is open air drug markets on every corner.
He could sit there. And let me tell you this, one officer can cover two corners if he's at the corner. So for
You're
every
right. Yeah.
four blocks, if you have an officer here and an officer
Hmm.
there, that's fine. And then sometimes you just put road checks in strategic places. But if you
Yeah, you can do
block
that.
the drive-through window of McDonald's, they're gonna go
Hmm.
out of business. They can't sell Big Macs.
Right.
If I block it so that the customers can't get there, if the customers got to go through road checks, and the customers got warrants, they're carrying drugs, they're doing all of this and
Mhm.
that. Well, now they can't sell their product, so it can be stopped.
You know how they defeat that though?
How?
You know how they defeat that?
How?
Guess what?
How?
911, there's an officer that's down at somewhere else. Officer starts running over there. Guess what a bunch of them junkies do over there? They just go to that
Yeah,
space
yeah,
that
and
everybody left
that
out of
came
there.
that came up too. And like I've told everybody, hey, everybody can't leave the polls. We need enough people to
Right.
go see if it's legit, and you got to stay there because you got to understand there's some lazy officers that don't want to sit in front of a drug house. I got a lot of resistance on that, but I had to make
That's
them
true
do it.
too.
But
I know
they
that.
can, it can, and it because it might not be the drug dealers calling. It might be the officer just so he can leave. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But
No, no, you got that.
you got to make them do their job. Like I always told you, I've never accepted this stuff about leading a horse to the water, but I can't make him drink. You got to make him drink. You either got to pry his mouth open and pour the water or get an IV. No
Yeah.
excuses. And
Hey, Keith,
so we need
there,
stuff that works.
yeah, and here's the bad part about it. In a city like that, why I did some pushback is there would be times when I would come in on a midnight shift and we're 100 calls in the hole.
Hmm.
So officers can't do that because they're running around, at least the patrol ones, and then of course us in uniform, we're trying to help them out too.
But you know
So we're
why?
making
You
calls.
know why there are 100 calls in the hole, right?
Why's that?
Because most agencies, the majority of the officers work 9 to 5 with weekends off and holidays off. So by the time nighttime comes, by the weekend comes as a skeleton crew, because for some reason people believe that they're supposed to work bankers hours. Police work is not bankers hours. And I can tell you a good way to solve that problem
Mhm,
is, especially when you got a backup call volume.
mhm.
If the patrolman can't answer the call, it goes to the sergeant. If the sergeant can't answer the call, dispatch your lieutenant. If the lieutenant can't dispatch the call, dispatch the captain. If the captain can't he's tied up, dispatch the major. I guarantee you all of that'll come to a stop real quick. Folks will start
Well,
answering calls because because they know for sure if they were so backed up and no one's answering calls that I got to get dispatched, everybody's gonna have a bad day.
yeah,
So a lot of this stuff is just laziness and not having manpower where it needs to be. Because if
yeah,
you got the majority of the force working 9 to 5, how the heck can you fight crime?
yeah. That wasn't the type of work we had over there in Baltimore City. We had 6 on, 2 days off, and of course the ABC shift. On top of that, um, it's kind of hard to do that when 5 bodies drop. And
I know what you're saying, but I
you know what I
guarantee
mean?
you, if you look, you got a lot of people doing administrative duties that's unnecessary. I know in Clayton County, they had about 9 people on the community relations team. And I remember a friend of mine walked past and they were in there playing cards. You know why?
Oh
Because
yeah.
they didn't have a cookout to go to. Meanwhile, there's officers backed up on calls, but these guys don't have to go on calls because they're in the community program. It's insanity.
Mhm,
And you got some officers doing work and records. You got some officers doing that. Take all of these folks and put them on the street.
mhm, mhm.
That's what you got to do.
Yeah, yeah. No, no.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree with that. With you know, I think that in theory that works. But in Baltimore City, it was just a different animal there. The ABC shift is the A shift, the B shift, and the C shift. And so just think about a morning, noon, and night shift. That's the easiest way I can explain that. Somebody just asked in the chat, what's the ABC shift? So you got the morning shift, the A shift, the
Mhm.
evening shift is B, and the night shift is C. Of course, our units, in the plainclothes units, we'd overlap two of those shifts so we can keep the manpower at least reasonable well throughout the 24-hour cycle. So that's what we have there on that end.
And
Yeah.
Jerome, you got legit points now. But I'm
Mhm.
just telling you, from the administrative aspect, you'd be surprised how many people get hired. They don't have to go on the street and patrol.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They're
Yeah,
house cats.
you
Yeah,
hire,
you got
yeah,
to get
you
them out,
hire
cat people out of
exactly.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you hire a girl, she's attractive. You know what? You don't have to go on control. Just weren't
yeah.
you a masseuse? Why don't you give everybody a massage? Don't go on the road. You know what I'm saying? I know that sounds crazy, but
No, no,
no,
no.
that's happening for
Who's
real.
that? Who's
I
that? The
know it sounds
councilman's
crazy.
son?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, he got a job here. What does he do? Oh, he's just bean
Exactly.
counting over here.
But if you
Yeah,
take everybody and put them on the road like they should be,
yeah.
a lot of folks shouting about I don't have enough people. You got
Mhm.
enough people. You just don't have people. You got a lot of people that ain't doing the work.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah,
Yeah.
we got a lot of. And I'm just gonna go ahead and let everybody. We have a lot of lazy motherfuckers out there. Because if you're a hard charger, you're gonna get an AI number. You're gonna go ahead and get, you're gonna get customer complaint numbers and stuff like that. Because not everybody's gonna like your style of how to handle and deal with certain things. And especially They're not going to go, hey, you know what, Detective Hill, let me put my hand behind my back. No, 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 no. They're not doing that. They're fighting or they're running around, and you
Yeah,
have to go ahead and chase them. It's going to generate, some type of physical contact. And when that happens, shit happens. It goes sideways, but you
that's
can't
true.
ignore. That's how that rolls and goes. So that's
So yeah, let's get back together, brother, and
mhm,
talk about this, and then let's really hammer down on solutions.
okay.
That's what I used to love about Reuben Greenberg. He used to actually have a symposium, and it was called "What Works,"
Mhm,
and it would be a think tank that would come together and come up with ideas that actually work.
mhm. Yeah.
And a lot of ideas that I use, a lot of them came from him.
Hmm.
And whether I tweaked it or maybe they inspired some ideas that he may not have had,
Sure.
but what actually works,
Yeah.
because we again, we have all these symposiums, people talk about, this is growing, this is a problem, and then there's a lot of people talk about we need to bring awareness to the problem. Okay, good, now we're aware of it. I think we're very aware that people are getting
Yeah.
killed by mental health people. Okay, now what are we going to do about it?
Right.
And that's what I've always wanted, not always wanted, that's what my leadership was always about:
Hmm.
solving problems.
Yeah.
Don't tell a group of people, like, let me tell you a problem we had in Clayton County. We would get these calls where, these kids are cutting through my yard. Okay. Then the police would tell them,
Mhm.
okay, well, put a trespassing sign up. Okay. Well, do you really think they're going to look at that trespassing sign and say they're not going through?
Right.
Okay. And then they would tell people, well, yeah, we can't do nothing because you don't have a trespassing sign. Okay, well then they put the trespassing sign up. They call the police. The police take an hour to get there. Well, hell, well they're gone now. Well, ma'am, there's nothing you can do about that. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
So how do you solve the problem? Well, I literally would have to send a deputy to those places, and I sent him there for a day, and
Hmm.
he would sit there and stop everybody going through their yard and
Hmm.
ID them and find out who they are and criminal trespassing. It took time, it took effort, but it solved the problem.
Hmm.
You can't just tell people there's nothing we can do.
Right. Right.
There's
Right. Right.
always something you can do.
Sure. Sure. Sure.
Right. What works?
Mhm.
It's not the trespassing sign. And we can't tell them, well, hey, just, because we know people have gotten killed confronting kids going through their yards.
Absolutely.
Right. So the government has to handle that. You can't
Mhm.
expect them to do it because the kid coming through your yard could well have a gun.
Mhm.
So you got to do what works. And sometimes what works takes time and manpower, and it takes money.
Yeah.
That's the type of stuff you use overtime for.
Right. Yeah, I think that when you mentioned those words, it evoked what happened to Trayvon Martin down here in Sanford, Florida, with George Zimmerman. If you don't remember the story, everyone, George Zimmerman was an individual who was in a civilian police academy or a police academy on the collegiate side of it, and
Yes.
thus he was a little bit excited seeing a gentleman going down the street, and he looked to him to be suspicious. That gentleman just got done purchasing an Arizona tea. He lived in the Miami area and was visiting his father up here in Sanford, Florida. Subsequently, George Zimmerman, approached him. He called 911, told him what he felt as though was the issue. Of course, 911 told him to stand down, that officers are on the way. However, Florida has stand your ground as part of their laws here, and he confronted him, and he got more than what he could bargain for. Um, Trayvon Martin at that point in time bristled up on him. Of course, it escalated to where there was a physical confrontation, and then George Zimmerman, eating pavement at the time, he takes his gun out and shoots and kills a 17-year-old boy. So that's the part of evoking where people are trying to handle things on their own, and it can lead to tragic circumstances.
Right. That's absolutely right. And there's a lot of meat on those bones. That's a whole nother show in itself.
Yeah.
we have seen some heroic things lately, though. But y- you're still surprised that they're willing to do it. I mean, we covered the stabbing at McDonald's
Right.
where a guy fired a shot and held her.
Good
For,
job. Mhm.
right, right, right. But who knows what would have happened if he actually shot her? I mean, if he shot her, that would have made perfect sense. But
Mhm.
he could have well got charged with murder, and
And
then
if
you think,
not, civilly.
yeah, or
Dealing with that
civilly,
matter on a
exactly.
civil matter. So, it's just tomato, tomato in some regards.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And then so and it's yeah, it's one of those things. It's another incident. We're gonna have to cover that too. I know we're getting close to our hour mark,
Mhm.
but there was another guy that was stabbing some people at Walmart, and a Marine stopped him with a
Mhm.
weapon. Uh, that's some interesting footage, and I'd like us to look at that as well too.
Okay.
But again, we're still talking about mental health issues. I
Right.
mean, when you look at what happened at McDonald's,
Mhm.
that girl obviously had mental health issues.
Big
Whoever
time.
this guy was that was stabbing people at Walmart obviously had mental health issues.
Right.
And again, it's all intertwined. There's no way to deal with crime and separate mental health issues there, because a lot of crimes are committed by people that have mental health. And if we
Right.
can get them help or get them detained, then perhaps they wouldn't be able to commit these crimes.
Well said. Well said.
Yeah.
All right, we'll leave it there for tonight. Certainly, thank you, brother, for coming in and chat with me a little bit about this. We're going to go ahead and be a little bit more spontaneous and do a couple of these throughout the upcoming months because you guys are asking for it, actually. So we'll go ahead and put that out there. So until later, brother, you have anything to say to the good folks out there?
Hey, I just want to thank everybody. Thank all of our followers, subscribers. Continue to hit the like button for us. It helps a lot. And we just appreciate having you. And we just welcome any new subscribers that we've gotten this week, and welcome everybody to come.
Yeah. Well said. All right. Without further ado, that will be it for tonight. Take care, everyone. Be safe out there.
All right, brother.
All right.